Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I am Ryan Wormley, joined today by Andrew Erickson and by our guest, Chris Raybon of Action Network. Chris, I've been saying it all month. Thank you so much for making the time during the busy season.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. You know I like talking to fantasy football this time of year.
Oh, there's nothing more fun.
You better, Chris. It's August, baby. My favorite things in August are fantasy football, pumpkin spice, pumpkin beer. There we go.
Is it pumpkin spice more of like a
ultimate
fall
trifecta
thing?
You're forgetting preseason betting. Like, what is this? You just
yeah, true.
Oh, that's true. I'm now adopting preseason betting now in Massachusetts that we finally legalized sports wagering. I actually just got out the Betting Pros show with Joey Futures talking some preseason betting. I like the Seahawks money line this week.
Okay, there we go. That's what I
love
like
to hear. Everybody should go check that out. This is a fantasy show, though, and we will dive right in because we have a lot of names to get to. We are talking our top 16 league winners. We're going to get 8 names from each guy, going 8-1 for each of them. League winning players. One of them has already injured himself earlier today. If you know anything about Erickson, you could probably guess who that is. We will get to that later in the show. We will start with Chris, your number 8 league winner. Who you got?
I'm going with Evan Engram for the Jags because when you look at this tight end landscape, you have Travis Kelce with a huge separation over almost everybody else. I think Mark Andrews is in a tier of his own, but it's tough to find true, top 3 upside at tight end. And for each of these league winners, I actually did some research based on, what I think qualifies as a league winner. I went back and looked at all of the top 3 tight ends since 2014 that also beat their ADPs by at least 3. So top 3 tight ends that finished in the top 3 that weren't being drafted as such. And one of the things you see is you really don't see a lot of guys in their first 3 years in the league being league winners. And most of them tend to be in that 25 to 29 age range, years, in their somewhere in their 4th year or later. And that's Evan Engram. And when you look at him and what he did last year, one of the top leaders at the position in routes run, in this offense, Doug Peterson is like, hey, we want to score 7 more points per game than we did last year. So they want to get to 30 points a game. They want to go even faster tempo. They have ballers everywhere at the skill position. So it's not like Ingram's going to be seeing a lot of, double coverage and things like that. And he really came on after about a month where it was kind of up and down over those last 12 games of the regular season and even into the postseason. He looked like a different player. And I think he's one of the few tight ends that, isn't named Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews that has a chance to put up that kind of production. Really the only one I see that's going this late. I don't think Freiermuth is in that discussion. I think he's great, but I don't think he's volume-wise is going to have the opportunity to do it what Engram does, because I think the Jaguars could throw a lot this year. Their defense isn't great, and they want to score a lot of points. So Evan Engram for me.
Yeah, tier 2, if you look in ECR, is Waller, Kittle, Pitts, Goddard, Engram, and Freiermuth. It's a large tier 2. Kelce, Andrews, and Hockenson is in tier 1. So Engram, is he your favorite guy in that tier, or he's just your favorite value in that tier?
So he's the guy that I think, I don't think the order or the tier itself is wrong per se. But again, when you look at guys who kind of profile as these league winning type of guys, not just a guy that might, beat his ADP by, 1 or 2 spots, but a guy who can actually be a top 3 guy at the position, which I think you want. If you make the playoffs and you got a top 3 guy, then you're in pretty good shape. No one's really going to outdo you at that position. Evan Engram he's really the only guy that fits that profile. Once you get to tight ends that are older or younger, you don't really see it as much. It's just in this kind of at this point in his career. And then you look at all these circumstances around him with the Jaguars offense, with the defense, with what they want to do, with how many snaps he's playing, running a route on about 80% of the dropbacks, which is one of the highest route participation rates in the league for tight ends. He just checks all of the boxes for a guy that could put up, a Kittle or Kelsey like season statistically.
Erickson, give me your number 8 player here.
Going running back Khalil Herbert for the Chicago Bears, because every time he touches the ball, he's just really good. We saw it in the preseason. I don't think it's like that. We need to be more specific. Like anytime he's been the feature running back over the last 2 years, so he's 8 games with 13 or more touches, he's averaged back-end fantasy RB1 numbers. So I understand like he's going outside the top 30 running backs. He's the starting running back for the Chicago Bears. And I know a lot of people like Roschon Johnson. I like Roschon Johnson coming out too, but Khalil Herbert has the starting job. So he has to lose the starting job to Roschon. And I'm just trying to figure out, okay, well, every time this guy touches the ball, he's ripping off like these massive touchdowns left and right. So unless he gets hurt, how is Roschon actually going to unseat him as the RB1 in this offense? And I'm willing to take on that risk of him losing that job when you can draft him outside the top 30 running back. So ascending Bears offense, Khalil Herbert is super efficient. He is the RB1 as it stands right now. So I'm all in on Khalil Herbert. I think he can be a league winner if he holds this job for the majority of the season.
Do you think that the ceiling is fully there? Like, obviously, I agree he's like a very talented running back, but it's not just a crowded backfield. It's also the fact that Fields is going to run a lot. So there's just only so many carries to go around for an offense. So when you think league winner, you think ceiling, a guy that can like go in and dominate matchups and literally win you games. Do you think Herbert can do that, or is he just more of a value where he is?
Well, I think that he's a little bit of both. Now, do I think he's going to be like a top 3 running back? Like, no, because I don't think he'll have the pass game work. But league winner is also considering where you drafted him versus finish. I'm saying that Khalil Herbert can be a fantasy RB1 and you draft him as an RB3. So like the gap that he is making up, I think that puts him in league winning territory, even if it's not him himself that's winning all your weeks for you. He's helping you along the way because you already have a stacked roster and you're starting Khalil Herbert as your RB1 or RB2 when you drafted him at a fraction of the cost.
Everybody needs to get ready for the ultimate fantasy football showdown with the 4th annual FantasyPros Fantasy Fest. Join us live on our YouTube channel Wednesday, August 30th, starting at 3 p.m. Eastern or 12 p.m. Pacific for a fantasy football extravaganza like no other. We've got a star-studded lineup of familiar faces and the best fantasy experts from all around the industry coming together to bring you the latest and greatest insights to help you dominate your draft. We're talking player rankings, mock drafts, and a treasure trove of exclusive topics that you won't find anywhere else. But here's the best part. You can be a part of the action. Join the live conversation, ask your burning questions, and help us make the big calls. Can't make it live? No worries. You can catch all the excitement later on your own time. But trust us, you won't want to miss the live show. So mark your calendars and set those reminders because the Fantasy Pros Fantasy Fest is happening exclusively on our YouTube channel. Chris, let's go to your number 7 league winner.
Wide receiver Christian Watson of the Green Bay Packers. This is a player who came on in a big way, pretty much broke out down the stretch last season, averaged 65 yards per game, nearly a touchdown per game over his final 8 games. And he accounted for over 30% of Green Bay's passing yardage, 62% of Green Bay's touchdowns passing over that 8-game stretch to end the season. So, regardless of what you think of Jordan Love, and I think he'll be decent, Christian Watson is shown already that he's capable of being a target hog. He's shown that he's capable of creating opportunities and to score touchdowns when they're not there with his yard after catch ability. He was great in the red zone. He scored on 5 of his 9 red zone touches a season ago. We saw that going back to when he was at North Dakota State. The quarterback play wasn't always there, but he was always a guy that, every time he seemed to get the ball, he was scoring touchdowns. And he is a player that fits what, generally profiles as a league winner. I looked for wide receivers. I looked at top 6 wide receivers that weren't drafted, top 6 that improved at least 6 spots on their ADP going into the season. And what you find is that over 90% of them are being drafted in the top 30 wide receivers. So a lot of times, at this time of the year, we're talking about all these sleepers and, guys we like a little later on in the draft. But when it comes to actual league winners and guys that are going to lead the league in scoring, in fantasy scoring, these guys are the guys you are taking in the first, 5, 6, 7 rounds. After that, your sleepers are more, for your depth and things like that. So, Watson fits the bill in this sense. And you usually don't see rookies as being league winners. Only 4% have done so since 2014. Watson's now going into year 2. We know wide receivers in year 2 tend to make their biggest jumps. So I just love everything about Watson. And this Green Bay defense probably still isn't going to be great. Joe Barry just has not maximized the talent there. The last 2 years, they've been 20th or worse in DVOA, despite pretty talented units. So that just works even better for Watson, because that means Green Bay should have to pass a decent amount. I don't think they're going to go super run heavy just because Rodgers left. So I just love Watson for his explosiveness and everything he brings to the table.
Yeah, you hit on all the questions I was planning to ask you, so we'll just move on to the next player here. Erickson, give me your number 7.
I'm going to go with the tight end of my own, Darren Waller. Just think that he's one of the cheapest elite tight ends that you can draft. He's going to project as the number 1 receiver on his team, which puts him into an elite tier of tight ends with Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, and sometimes Dalton Schultz. So, the fact that we already saw this also on display in the preseason game where Daniel Jones is basically dropping back to throw the ball to Darren Waller every single time. Got the first 3 targets in the game. He had a 44% target share. He was targeted on 50% of his routes. Darren Waller had to not be at practice one day because they wanted Daniel Jones to throw the ball to other players. Darren Waller, if he's healthy, that's the big if, just his health. But if he's on the field, he's going to put up numbers, and he's going to, I think, contest with guys like Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews to be the tight end 1 overall. Just a matter if he stays on the field. So his ADP is going up, which I'm not exactly thrilled about because people are finally starting to catch on. But if Waller's out there and healthy, man, he's going to be an easy league winner, especially when you can still draft him in round 6.
What is he ranked for you at the position? Is he 3rd behind only Kelce and Andrews?
Yeah, I put him at tight end 3 the minute he got traded to the Giants. And I feel good about it. I felt good about it then. Feel better about it now.
What round are you drafting him personally to make sure you get him?
It's at the end of round 5, round 6. That's really where I feel most comfortable. I have seen some ADPs that have him up into round 4. That for me is where it gets a little too rich when I am taking on too much of the risk because the injury stuff is real. I'm not going to just ignore that. And especially if he is vacuuming up a lot of targets, that means he's going to take more hits on his body. So that doesn't necessarily mean hey, Waller's going to be there for the long haul. He'll probably be productive in the games he plays, which is big, but you're going to probably have to draft another tight end potentially just in case Waller can't sustain the length of the season.
Chris, let's move to your next player here, number 6.
George Pickens, the wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers, still going outside the top 30 in a lot of drafts. I expect him to lead the Steelers in receiving this year. He was pretty close as a rookie, despite playing in a very shaky pass offense, which I think is going to be a lot better in year 2 with Kenny Pickett with another year under his belt. But we've seen all the highlights in the preseason and the training camp and the crazy catches last year. We know this guy has talent, but what he's been doing this offseason is he's been working to expand his route tree. So he came, within 100 yards, less than that, of, beating out Deontay Johnson for the team leading receiving yardage last season. Well, essentially just being a go route runner who did not get targeted at a high rate on a per route basis. And I think that, not only just because of the expanded route tree, but just in general, you usually see receivers going from their rookie year to their second year make a big jump in how often they're getting open, how often they're getting targeted, because they just start to understand how to get open and how to beat NFL defensive backs. They understand the speed of the game. So I just think this dude is massively talented. He could go deep. He's gonna be able to create explosive plays where they weren't there. He's going to be able to catch balls that he has no business catching. He's going to be great in the red zone. So I think people are obvious and understandably going to be concerned about how Pickett is going to do in the regular season. And is this offense going to be too run heavy again? But I think that regardless of what else is going on this offense, Pickens is just too talented to not be in this league winner conversation. And all of the league winners at wide receiver, every single one of them that I found going all the way back to 2014, all of them were being drafted between wide receiver 7 and wide receiver 38. So again, I just want to remind people that it's not just these sleepers that you have to kind of worry about. Okay, which of these sleepers am I going to be drafting? It's picking the right guys out of your wide receiver 2s and your wide receiver 3s and your kind of fringe flex wide receiver 4 type of players. And I think Pickens, his ADP is moving up as it should be, because I expect him to lead Pittsburgh in receiving, and I think he could even put a top 10 wide receiver season out there based on his talent.
Yeah, 10 is pretty aggressive. Do you think, just very quickly, that Kenny Pickett needs to take a big step forward for Pickens to get into that like top 10 level receiver?
I actually don't think Pickett needs to take a big step forward. I just think that, and maybe I guess by relation he does, because I think he just has to convince Tomlin, Canada, that he's taken enough of a step forward to where they don't want to just be this 30-35 rush attempt team every week. That to where they're comfortable, having 35 dropbacks in the game plan on a week-to-week basis. And I think, based on what we've seen quarterbacks going from year 1 to year 2, we tend to see the volume increase as the coaches get more comfortable with them and the quarterback gets more comfortable. So I'm not too worried about it. I think you got to bet on talent here. He fits the bill, wide receiver in year 2. And, you have kind of what you're alluding to. There's a lot of unrealized upside for Pickett too. And that's, not being fully priced in. So I think Pickens is a steal here, whereas a lot of these other wide receivers going in that range, it's like, how much are they really going to beat their ADP by, even if they do? Like you have Evans and Godwin with Baker Mayfield. You have Michael Pittman in what probably is going to be a much lower volume offense. Just some guys that if they beat their ADP, I just don't think it's with the same amount of, to the degree that I think Pickens can do. Yeah, to the degree that the gusto that I think Pickens can do so.
I knew that was the word you wanted, Chris. I was like, it's there.
All right, Eric,
I don't know words. I only know stats. Like I can't. It's that time of year, man. I don't know any vocabulary.
Yeah, everybody's brain is fried.
Exactly. So my number 6 guy, wide receiver DK Metcalf. Look, I think that Metcalf, given Tyler Lockett entering his age 31 season, we have Jackson Smith-Njigba also now slated to potentially miss some time to open the year. I think that Metcalf, people keep pointing to how Metcalf is like not as good as Lockett. Lockett always outscores Metcalf, yada, yada, yada. But it's like, we have to project them forward. Metcalf is 26 years old in his uber prime, and he's still seen better opportunities than Tyler Lockett in this Seahawks offense. Over the last 2 seasons, DK Metcalf is 6th overall in target share at 27%. He's also missed 0 games during his 4-year career. We don't talk about availability enough, I think, with fantasy, because it's always like points per game this, points per game that. But it's like Metcalf is always playing. So that's why sometimes his points per game don't necessarily look as good as some of these other players, because he's always on the field. Like, he doesn't miss games. So I'm also seeing a very high floor with Metcalf. Last year, he led all wide receivers in end zone targets, but he just ran bad in terms of touchdown production. It was actually Lockett that saw significantly less end zone targets that just converted at a higher rate. So I'm just not betting on that happening 2 years in a row. I think this is the year where Metcalf actually cashes in on all those end zone targets he got last year. And I think that he has crazy high ceiling. Like, are we going to be surprised when Metcalf's like, oh yeah, he was a top 5 fantasy wide receiver because he caught 15 touchdowns? Like, I'm not. Like, he's a super talented guy. And he just really hasn't had that season where he's all kind of put it all together. I think this could be the year where he does that. So I think DK Metcalf in round 3, I think that he has a crazy high ceiling that I think we haven't seen the best, honestly, of DK Metcalf.
Yeah, to your point, he's been. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say real quick. He's been targeted last year, which I think is the key, because that's when Geno Smith takes over and everything. Targeted on 24% of his routes compared to 20.5% for Tyler Lockett, which is a significant difference. And I don't think it has to be one or the other, in this offense. But Metcalf, to your point, he's been the guy that's been getting open and getting those targets even more, even if he hasn't kind of had the production to match it at times.
It is time to look to the future with our Here's to What's Next segment presented by Miller Lite. We're using this segment to look ahead and celebrate the future stars of fantasy football by talking about our favorite sleepers. Today, I want to ask about a guy who might not only be a future star, but a current one too, and that's Jahan Dotson. He's wide receiver 35 and ranked 79th overall in our consensus half PPR rankings. Erickson, I will start with you. How excited are you about Dotson as a sleeper in his second season?
I love Jahan Dotson. I think that he's a super high ceiling. He showed it as a rookie. He flashed big time potential, scoring touchdowns left and right. 10th in yards per route run overall in his last 5 games, basically matching Terry McLaurin in terms of production. My take, I think that Jahan Dotson outscores Terry McLaurin straight up in 2023.
Chris, what do you think?
Couldn't have said it better myself. 4.2 catches, 69 yards per game, 0.6 touchdowns over his last 5. He was great in the red zone, 5 touchdowns on 7 targets. He was great on 50-50 balls. 61% of his contested targets were caught, and he was 17th in catch rate on uncontested catches and deep balls. He was great as well. He was one of the top receivers in the league going downfield. So on all the things that score fantasy points, Jahan Dotson's great at. So I too think he has a very good shot of outscoring Scary Terry.
So it is unanimous. We all love Jahan Dotson. With a Miller Lite in your hand, summer doesn't just taste great. It tastes like Miller time. To get Miller Lite delivered right to your door, visit MillerLite.com/FantasyPros. That's MillerLite.com/FantasyPros. Or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces. Chris, let's go to your number 5.
Let's get a little post-hype Deebo Samuel here. He let everyone down last year after finishing as the wide receiver 2 in 2021. The numbers just weren't there last year. He only played in 13 games, and it just was nowhere near the same. But we know Deebo, what happens? He has a great year, then he kind of relaxes a little bit, and his conditioning goes away a little bit, and he comes in fatter, and then he has a down year, and then he gets motivated again. And that's what we've seen this year. But it's not about the narrative. It's about the fact that he was hurt for a good part of last year. He played 13 games, missed 4, but he was kind of banged up in some of the other games. This year, I think he's coming in mostly healthy. I think you still have all of the same kind of structure in place, perhaps with even a better, offensive situation overall, because just the way Purdy can kind of move around and do some things, and the way he's just able to distribute the ball. I think people are kind of just looking back at last season's numbers saying, okay, well, it was Kittle that saw the big boost with Purdy, or it was Ayuk. And people are just kind of forgetting that Deebo Samuel posted a top 2 season at wide receiver. And when you're looking for league winners, if you can find a guy who's actually been a league winner, and is still 27, which is squarely in his prime for the wide receiver position, I think you got to take it. His rushing attempts are still going to be there. Even with McCaffrey here, this team is still going to be a team that, because they're so efficient on offense, because their defense is so good, they're going to have a lot of plays, and he's going to be able to carry the ball some. He was at 3.7 at that year. He was the number 2 wide receiver in 2021, and 3.2 carries per game last year. So not a massive difference in terms of the usage. It was just one of those things where he was a little banged up, didn't have as many big plays, but all of the capability still exists for Deebo Samuel. So I'm buying the dip. We faded him last year, buying the dip again, because I still think he has that top 5 upside. And I think people aren't talking about him the way I think they should be.
And quickly, Erickson, I know you really like Deebo as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that he's kind of being treated unfairly by the market because of, just a kind of a down year when he's 1 year removed from a 1,400-yard season. Like, people are willing to draft Calvin Ridley over Deebo because he had a 1,400-yard season like 2 or 3 years ago, but Deebo did it just like 1 year removed. So I think with Samuel, especially when Brock Purdy's been the quarterback, Deebo's been the number 1 guy. Like, that's who Brock Purdy has targeted the most. We saw it even in the preseason game. First 3 targets, Deebo. Like, it's really, for me, it's just a matter of,
is he healthy or not? Because of the way he plays super aggressively, he's basically a running back and a wide receiver, or he plays a running back style as a wide receiver, one of the best yards after the catch guys in the NFL. So that's the only concern I really have for Deebo. But like wide receiver 18 price tags, like, yeah, like I think that Deebo's a good pick there.
Erickson, we'll stick with you for your next pick.
Yeah, I'm going to the quarterback position with my number 5 league winner. I've talked about him a lot. It's Deshaun Watson. I'm just looking at a quarterback that can finish top 5 that's not being drafted as a top 5 quarterback. I really think that he's one of the rare players going so late in drafts that can be a top 5 fantasy quarterback. Look, last year, he was awful. But you know what he was doing? Rushing the ball. Like, rushing quarterbacks are coming at such a premium, but Deshaun Watson averaged 30 rushing yards per game last year. He's rushing the ball in the preseason. And I just think that his price point, where you get him in round 8 or round 9, he's giving you access to if he hits his ceiling, like he's going to be a top 5 fantasy quarterback, because every season that he's played at least 16 games, that's exactly what he has been. So I think that he's just being underrated because of the rushing he offers, which gives him a super high floor. And people are so fixated on, oh, his passing was so bad last year. It's like, yeah, well, he played off so much time off from football. He was playing in like the worst weather games you could possibly ask for. And it was all new pieces. Like he just had to be plopped back into the lineup. Now he has better weapons across the board. And I don't think Kevin Stefanski gets like enough credit as like a guy who helped like Baker Mayfield like have a legitimate season after a really bad year. So why can't he do that with Deshaun Watson, who has shown an elite ceiling at the NFL level the last time he played a full season? So for me, Deshaun Watson, I think, is one of my favorite late round quarterbacks because of his upside that he can offer.
Do the preseason reports of him being inaccurate bother you at all?
No, because if you look at more of the reports, they also say that he's really never played with the full arsenal of weapons. Like Amari Cooper has missed time, Elijah Moore has missed time. So that's when you get to these reports where it's one headline, you grab it, you're like, oh, he's been bad at camp. But then you read into it, it's like, yeah, but Elijah Moore's not out there, and neither is Cooper, and it's only David Njoku. So, yeah, of course they're going to be struggling in training camp if he doesn't have all of his toys to work with. So I think that that's all noise, to be totally honest. And I think that you benefit more from fading training camp noise a little bit than just buying into it. Like, what's your advantage if everyone is fading Deshaun Watson because of the training camp? If he busts, okay, I drafted him in round 9. But if he hits, league winner.
Guys, anyone who knows me or listens to this show knows how much I love going to see sports in person. The NFL is right around the corner, just a couple short weeks away, and I'm really excited to check out Empower Field at Mile High Stadium now that I'm a Denver resident, and I'm going to get to a Broncos game with the help of Game Time, the fastest growing ticketing app in the United States. For last-minute amazing deals on tickets to see your favorite baseball team, band, or comedian, download Game Time. And again, it's not just sports. Summer means huge concerts and comedy shows all across the country, and Game Time has your tickets. Download the Game Time app and redeem code FANTASYPROS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the Game Time app and enter code FANTASYPROS for $20 off. No matter where you live, get out and have some fun this week. Download Game Time today and enter code FANTASYPROS. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Chris, let's get to your number 4.
Erickson kind of just mentioned him, and it's Calvin Ridley. I think he's another player when I look at the situation that he's coming into here in Jacksonville. Not only is he possessive of the talent that, as we talked about, has led to a top 5 season in the past, but there's some untapped potential here with another big leap from Trevor Lawrence in this offense. Because again, year 2 under Doug Peterson, he's stated that he wants to increase the production by a touchdown per game, that they want to go faster. They have a good mix of an easy schedule, but a shaky defense. So they should be playing in a lot of kind of shootouts that they should have success in, I think. And I look at Ridley and, he's a guy, again, I think we're just kind of not really talking about him enough because, you got Christian Kirk there and a lot of people like Engram. And then you got the running back situation, and everyone's kind of falling in love with Tank Bigsby, and Etienne was really good last year. So I still think Ridley's getting a little bit overlooked. And I think that he can get right back to that form that we saw in that 2020 season in Atlanta. He's always been a touchdown maker. And when you look at a guy like Carson Wentz, his first year under Peterson, he was very bad. And, Lawrence, his production doubled in his first year under Peterson. His touchdown rate went from 2% to 4.3%. His interceptions cut in half, added about 30-ish, just under 30 yards per game passing. His passer rating jumped over 20 points. Completion rate went up over almost 7 points. I think you could see another jump like that this year, because this is really Lawrence's second year in the league. I think he's going to pass the ball a lot. I think he could be one of the league leaders in pass attempts, pass yards. And, Carson Wentz went from 1 touchdown per game in his first year with Peterson to 2.5 touchdowns per game and was an MVP candidate, led the league in touchdown rate in 13 games before getting injured in his second year under Peterson. So I think you could see another jump like that from Lawrence in this offense. And we saw Christian Kirk, a guy who was kind of always a complimentary piece, who we were like, oh, why did they give all this money to Christian Kirk? And then he goes there, as the number one receiver, first year with a new team, new scheme, new quarterback, still puts up over 1,100 yards. I think Ridley is even more talented and is going to take that role in an offense that is going to be even better. So Calvin Ridley, league winner for me.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement here. Erickson, I know you're down, at least relative to other Fantasy Pros analysts, on Ridley. What is it that you're not getting there on him with?
Just price, really. Like when he was available in round 4, I was taking him every single time, but I've seen him go as early as the end of round 2. And for me, that's just a lot of risk for a guy that we haven't seen play in a really long time. And even when he was playing on the Falcons, demanding a high target share, it was Kyle Pitts that he was competing with for targets, a rookie. And when he had that breakout year with the Falcons, Julio Jones played like half the games. Like I would argue just Calvin Ridley's never had as much target competition that he's had in Jacksonville that he ever had at any point in Atlanta. So that's my only concerns. I still like him when he's in round 4, the end of round 3, but when he goes into the back end of round 2, there's other players I prefer. I think they have safer floors.
Erickson, your next pick is the running back everybody has been touting as a league winner all summer long.
Well, everybody's right because it's Tony Pollard for the Dallas Cowboys. Look, when he was playing over 53% of the snaps as the featured back last year from week 7 through 16, he was averaging almost 20 fantasy points per game, first overall in terms of points per game over that span. Like Ezekiel Elliott is gone. Like we've wanted this for so long. Free Tony Pollard. And we're finally getting it. And we're like, yeah, but like Deuce Vaughn is going to like take away his touches. And Rico, like guys, like just be happy. Just draft Tony Pollard in round 2. Like just be happy that you can get this guy who again is on a franchise tag deal. This is not a long-term contract. Why would Dallas need to, we got to monitor his reps over the season. It's like this guy may not even be on the Cowboys next year. So I could see Jerry Jones being in a DeMarco Murray situation where churn and burn, baby. Like, let's run Tony Pollard because we know we can do it until the wheels fall off. So I think that he is just such a great pick in round 2. I know we talked about it with Graham Barfield last week, and I'm on board. And I think that Tony Pollard, he was a league winner last year. And again, going back to league winners sometimes repeat when their prices don't necessarily reflect their potential and upside. And I think Pollard has round 1 upside, and he's just not reflected in his ADP.
Yeah, Chris, is Pollard a smash for you in round 2?
Yeah, I mean, I'm already drafting him like he is going to win me the week. Like, he didn't even occur to me that he would be a league winner because he's just, I have him like RB7. He can only go up so much from there. But no, I agree. He's an amazing talent. And the fact that Dallas felt comfortable, going away from Zeke and bringing in, and now they have a guy behind him on the depth chart that's 5'5". He's shorter. He's smaller than me. I'm not a huge guy, and he's shorter than me. So that's what we're working with here with Pollard. And by the way, this Dallas offense, it has always been very good in terms of scoring the ball and giving its running backs opportunities. So there's really nothing not to like with Tony Pollard.
Yeah, you got him RB7. Deebo has him RB1, so he is even more excited than the two of you. Let's get to our top 3 guys here from each of you. Chris, we'll start with you. Who's your number 3?
So this might catch some people a little bit off guard, but Justin Herbert. It's in the day and age where everyone's falling in love with these scrambling quarterbacks, and rightfully so. I've been talking about them for years, and last year, Justin Fields and Jalen Hurts was essentially my draft plan at quarterback. But I just think that I have to make an exception for Justin Herbert because I can see him putting up a just bonkers, ridiculous passing season. Because when they moved on from Lombardi at offensive coordinator and they went out and hired Kellen Moore, Staley came out and said, what happened last year with Herbert was unacceptable. We want to throw the ball down the field. We want to be aggressive. We want to bombs away. Then they go out when they already have 3 pretty good wide receivers. And what do? They go select a wide receiver in the first round of the draft in Quentin Johnson. So now you're looking at an offense that can go 4 wide, which is always great. It has one of the best pass catching running backs in the game. It has 2 solid pass catching tight ends in Everett and Donald Parham. Should have decent protection if guys are healthy, which they weren't last year. And Herbert's going to be healthy. Remember, he sustained that rib injury and was still throwing dimes, still throwing dots in that game, still suited up the next week. But I think Herbert leads the league in passing yardage this year. And by the way, the Chargers have played fast every year since they drafted Herbert, but not as fast as the Cowboys have played under Kellen Moore. The Cowboys have been top 2 in pace in all 4 of Kellen Moore's seasons. This offense is going to be even faster paced. It's even more stacked, and it's going to be much more aggressive. And Justin Herbert was already a quarterback who, in his first 3 years in the league, averaged 288 passing yards per game. He's a quarterback who, in his first 3 years in the league, threw 94 touchdowns per season. That's over 94 touchdowns in his overall. That's over 30 per season. This is a guy who has never averaged fewer than 39 pass attempts per game in any of his 3 NFL seasons. And I think he's going to be, it's going to get even more aggressive this year. So, there's not going to be another year of 6.8 yards per attempt. I can tell you that. So I'm loving Justin Herbert. I think people are kind of sleeping on him as a guy who could, put up, like, everyone's kind of looking at Lamar, rightfully so, and Fields, who I'll talk about, but I'm not sleeping on Herbert to have the overall QB1 finish.
Yeah, we've got a couple other quarterbacks coming up in this conversation, but I can tell you just from having done shows with Erickson all summer, he and I are in lockstep with you on Herbert. I think Herbert, he's QB7 right now. I think I'm going to, outside of a guy we're going to talk about later, I will probably roster Herbert in more leagues than any other quarterback because he is the guy going lowest that I think has the highest ceiling. That could be one of those tier 1 guys. I love Herbert at cost this year. Erickson, the next guy we're talking about, I know you would love to talk about.
Yeah, it's Travis Etienne for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, Chris did a great job of kind of breaking down, waxing poetic about this Jaguars offense and how it can really take a step forward another year with Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson. And that's why I love Etienne. And the fact that he's in this great offensive environment and the fact that he was so good last year. And people are just so fixated on, well, he didn't catch enough passes, he didn't score enough touchdowns, but the guy had over 1,400 yards from scrimmage. He posted over 1,100 rushing yards, averaged 5 yards per carry at age 23. Other guys to do that at age 23 or younger, Saquon Barkley, Ray Rice, Frank Gore, Darren McFadden, Jonathan Taylor, Clinton Portis, and Barry Sanders. We're getting a elite, explosive running back on a top 5 potential offense that you can draft in round 4 because of a guy named Tank Bigsby. I just don't understand. I will push all my chips in betting against a 3rd-round rookie running back that hasn't taken a snap in the NFL so that I can get access to Travis Etienne, who's played not just one NFL season with Trevor Lawrence, multiple college football seasons with Trevor Lawrence, where he scored 70 touchdowns at Clemson. This guy is going to be a touchdown monster because you don't have to score from the goal line. You guys, you're allowed to score from outside the 10-yard line. So even if Tank Bigsby has some, intricate red zone role, that doesn't stop Etienne from still being the lead back on a high-powered offense, seeing 60% of the snaps. So I just think that Etienne, we're going to look up next year and be like, Etienne's a 2nd-round pick. And for that to happen, I think that he's going to have a monster season. And look, I get that a lot of people don't like Etienne, but with some of these league winners, it's not going to be a consensus take. The best league winner last year was Josh Jacobs, and everybody hated him. So for me, you got to find someone that's a little bit polarizing. You see the flaws, but you got to go all in. And for me, Travis Etienne.
And Jacobs was going in this same range that Etienne is in the stereotypical RB dead zone. Very, very quickly, Erickson, do you actually dislike Bigsby, or is it just the profile of a third round rookie that you don't like?
I did not like Tank Bigsby's profile coming in. Like, I'll be frank. If they had drafted Zach Charbonnet in the second round, I wouldn't feel this strongly about Etienne. Like, it is a player take. I just don't think Tank Bigsby is as good as everybody thinks he is. I just don't. So for me, that's why, and it's why I don't have Ken Walker here. If Tank Bigsby had gone to Seattle, I would be much higher on Ken Walker and the fact that he was a third round pick versus a second round pick. So it's just the things I look at. And again, I just see no advantage of like betting on a third round rookie to just supplant a guy who had a Jonathan Taylor-esque season as in his first year in the pros. So, and the last thing I'll bring up here. So the Jags' current offensive coordinator is Press Taylor, right? Press Taylor was the Colts offense assistant in 2021 when Jonathan Taylor went absolutely nuclear. Like, and it was the same thing with JT. He's like, oh, they're going to use Nyheim Hines in the passing game. It's like, guys, the Jaguars want to win the Super Bowl, and they're going to want to use their best players. And Travis Etienne is their best running back. So I think he's going to touch the ball plenty enough to pay off with a super explosive skill set. I think that we haven't seen.
And let me just say this real quick, because I just want to like remind everyone that you don't have to, it doesn't have to be an either or. This Jaguar offense in the first year under Peterson, it scored 9 more points per game than it did the year before. Now he only wants to score 7 more, but it's possible. You know why? Because Trevor Lawrence is very good, because Travis Etienne is very good, because Calvin Ridley is very good, because Christian Kirk is very good, because Evan Engram is very good, because Zay Jones is a value as well. And Tank Bigsby, draft all of them. Like, it doesn't have to be an either or with this offense, because there's so much unrealized upside here with this Jag offense, who, you know, they still scored under 24 points a game last year. Like, there's still a lot of room for growth, and there's definitely the talent to get it done. So I just don't want people to think like, oh, I have to be like super down on Tank Bigsby, because honestly, Tank Bigsby is a value too. He was great in the preseason, and you know, if Etienne goes down, Tank Bigsby is going to, be able to put up similar production, or get the opportunity to at least. So I'm just investing in this Jags skill position group, because I just think they're undervalued across the board, and a number of these guys at different positions have a chance to either crush their ADP or be straight up league winners.
2 players left from each of you. Chris, who's your number 2?
Justin Fields, baby. It's at this point, it's kind of become a cliche, but he does have the opportunity to take another step forward now that they fleeced the Carolina Panthers to trade what was supposed to be their franchise quarterback, number 1 receiver for years to come, to them in exchange for a package for their franchise quarterback. So now you got DJ Moore here. You also got Mooney back healthy. Cole Kmet broke out as a legit red zone threat last year. Finally played up to his talent level. The offensive line, everybody except the rookie at right tackle had a above average to great PFF grade last year. So it's not going to just be a terrible offensive line the way it's been in years past. I really don't see many like flat out holes on the offense the way I did a year ago. And that's going to help Justin Fields with his major issue, which is taking sacks. His sack rate was just sky high last year, but you're going to have guys, Claypool should be more acclimated as well. You're going to have guys that are going to get open more, and Moore is going to be a big part of that. They're going to be able to separate and get open more. That's going to allow Fields to get the ball out sooner, not take as many sacks. That's going to keep drives alive. And Fields led the NFL in yards per carry at 7.1, played the same amount of games as Jalen Hurts, ran for nearly 400 more yards. And, we've seen it with Hurts. We've seen the completion percentage jump a bunch. We've seen the yards per attempt jump up a bunch. And I think and same thing with Josh Allen. And I think you're going to see the same thing with Fields, who, by the way, he was 6th in passing touchdown rate last year. His yard per attempt was just slightly above the league average and jumped a little bit. And his QBR doubled from his rookie year. So he already took some subtle steps forward that maybe people didn't realize in the passing game. It was just the sacks and the fact that, because of the sacks and, because it was year 1 in another new system, they just didn't open up the offense. They didn't really let him drop back a lot. So this year, I think you're going to start to see, his drop back rate normalize a bit more as he's going to be more comfortable in year 2. The line will be better. The receivers will be better. He's going to take that jump. And I mean, the upside is it's right. Like we could be talking about Fields in the same breath as Hurts or Lamar Jackson next year. And that might sound crazy to some people, but remember Lamar Jackson the year before his MVP season, he barely looked like he could throw a football that year. Remember Jalen Hurts? They were hiding him at times. Like he just didn't look like he could read defenses. And then boom, it's like either an MVP year or challenging for one. Josh Allen, same thing. Just everyone thought he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, and then he gets some decent receivers, and look, he can play at a top 5 level. So I'm all in on Justin Fields.
Yeah. So you obviously picked Herbert and Fields in this show. You've also talked a lot about how much you love the Jaguars offense. Those guys, 3 guys, Fields, Herbert, and Lawrence, are back to back at the end of tier 2 in our consensus rankings. Is that the order you would have them? Fields, then Herbert, then Lawrence?
I actually have Herbert ahead of Fields for the simple fact that when to generate my rankings, I'm doing actual raw projections for everybody. So I have Herbert projected to play more games. Like he has less injury risk just because Fields is still expected to run a ton. And, we've seen that with Lamar. We've seen Hurts miss some games, Daniel Jones in the past. So that's the only reason I would go Herbert over Fields, just from the perspective of I think he's a better bet to give you 17 games or I guess 16 games of league winning upside than Fields. But beyond that, they're pretty much neck and neck in like the per game projections of Herbert and Fields. And then, Lawrence is a little bit down from them, but the upside, we're looking for upside, right? And that's what Lawrence has as well. So he has the upside to match Herbert and Fields, just a little bit lower than them for now.
Erickson, we will go very quickly through your next player because there's a lot of unknowns with him right now. It's Jerry Jeudy. To pull back the curtain a bit, Jeudy was carted off the field with a hamstring injury earlier today on the day we're recording this show. It's not yet clear as of right now, unless something has popped up in the last 50 minutes of us recording. But unless there's been any breaking news since then, it is not yet known. We're awaiting an MRI to really see the full picture. But Erickson, you can still talk about why you like Jeudy or maybe somebody else in this passing offense.
Yeah, I still, again, hoping that Jeudy is okay with his hamstring injury. But, I mean, if he's going to be playing out there, I think that he has a lot of upside. Look at the final 5 weeks when he was playing a full allotment of snaps when he came back from a different injury. He was wide receiver 3 overall in points per game, wide receiver 4 overall in terms of full PPR. It was half PPR, wide receiver 3. Last 4 games played with Russ, he was averaging 18.2 PPR points per game. That was better than CeeDee Lamb. And then 15.25 half PPR points per game, which was the same as Jamar Chase. So, look, we've seen Jeudy's flash a really high ceiling when he's been healthy. That's been an issue with him. So, again, if he's going to miss the start of the season with this injury, I wouldn't necessarily shy away from him if he's going to come at a further discount because he will be a player that will fall in drafts, obviously. But right now, you can't really draft him with a lot of confidence just based on the ambiguity of the injury. But if for some reason, if Jeudy misses in a more extended period of time, I know what people are going to think, oh, Erickson, it's time. Like, you got to get back on Courtland Sutton. And for me, it wouldn't be Sutton, actually. It would be Marvin Mims. And this is going back to me trusting my process when it comes to rookies and scouting. Like, I loved Marvin Mims coming out of Oklahoma. He was a mega producer at an early age, broke out at 18 years old. He can win downfield and after the catch. He's super young still. He just turned 21. He was the first overall pick in the Sean Payton era in Denver. The other guys that Sean Payton has traded up for in the draft include Mark Ingram, Brandon Cooks, Alvin Kamara. Maybe you've heard of those guys. They turned out pretty good. So for me, if Sutton is going to become this really steamed up player, I probably won't be drafting much of him, and it will be Marvin Mims, a really talented rookie that I think that they have really high hopes for in Denver as someone that I could easily see being a league winner. I know I released an article early on in the offseason kind of trying to guess, like, who could be this year's Garrett Wilson, right? A player that's being drafted outside the top 45 overall wide receivers, a rookie in particular. And it's crazy to think that Garrett Wilson fell that far in drafts, but he did because of the Zach Wilson effect and the fact that we liked Elijah Moore. I'm not falling for that again. Like, I'm not falling for, going after a player I liked previously because of a rookie that I'm not sure about. I loved Garrett Wilson last year, and I loved Marvin Mims. So I'm going to be all in on Marvin Mims, and I'll let others draft Courtland Sutton more aggressively.
We're up against it on time, so we will go quickly here with our final players from each guy. Chris, who you got?
Alexander Mattison. I have him as a top 12 running back. I think I have him RB10 actually, and I just think the market is way up. I think the concerns are unfounded with him. Everything the Vikings have done all offseason has telegraphed that they want to use him as the feature back. They made Mattison a top 20 running back in terms of guaranteed money. They released Dalvin Cook. They don't bring in a veteran. They don't play Mattison a single snap in the preseason along with the rest of the first team offense. And every beat writer for the Vikings is saying, hey, like the Vikings love him and they plan to use him. And then when you look back at league winners, running backs over the last 8 seasons who have been top 6 running backs and have beat their ADP by at least 6 spots, you see those backs are generally in the age range of 28, under 28, and Madison's going to be in his age 25 season, and you see running backs who are generally in the top 30 range. About 80% of them are in the top 30, which makes sense. To get a top 6 running back season, it's probably not going to be. It's going to take a lot of luck to be outside of that range, but I think Mattison just checks all of those boxes. And, people are concerned about like, oh, is he not that good? Is he going to hold the job? They literally have Ty Chandler and Kenny Wangu and Dwayne McBride behind him. Those are essential. Those guys are not going to challenge him for the job at all. And by the way, according to PFF last season, Mattison he broke 23 tackles on rush attempts. That was 33rd in the league, but he was 56th in carries. So it's not as if this is like some guy who just can't get it done. It's really what happened was the offensive line was not very good, was 23rd in adjusted line yards, dead last in stuff rate, dead last in power success rate. Well, what did they do this offseason? They extend fullback CJ Ham, and they sign one of the best blocking tight ends in the league to a big contract in Josh Oliver. They want to play with more heavy personnel this year, and that should lead to a lot more efficiency for the run game. So I think Alexander Mattison is going to be this year's Josh Jacobs, one of the few guys that is going to play on every down, and everyone's kind of off of him because of some unfounded concerns in the offseason leading up to the draft that kind of depresses ADP. So love Mattison this year.
Yeah, Erickson, I know we said we were going to move really quickly, but I can't ignore the gap here. Chris said he might have Mattison as high as RB10. You have him RB31. So that is a huge disparity. Very quickly, Erickson, what do you disagree with on Alexander Mattison?
Well, I mean, Raybon brought up the points about, the people that don't like him, and those are the reasons why. Like, I just don't believe in Mattison as the talent. I don't believe in him. This coaching staff has never given him the bell cow role. And
what coaching staff? He was there for 1 year. This is the second year.
Yeah, and this was
they literally released the guy that they played on 72% of the snaps and didn't hire anyone. It didn't sign anyone else.
Madison, yeah, but why didn't he play more last year?
Because you had
Dalvin Cook was horrible last year.
No, I don't think.
Yeah, and he
I
was
don't think
horrible.
Dalvin Cook was horrible. I think the offensive line and the environment for running the football was poor. Because remember, this was a 1-1 personnel team. And they end up like TJ Hawkinson's not a great run blocker. Irv Smith's not a great run blocker. Like that was their offense. It was receiving based. This year they literally have said we want to be a better team with the run. We want to play with more heavier personnel and they're the moves they made contract wise back it up. I mean, for all the cap saving moves that they made, they extend a fullback and they sign a blocking tight end to a big deal with a lot of guaranteed money. Like. The writing's on the wall, in my opinion.
So why is Kareem Hunt visiting?
Because they need.
Would Kareem Hunt scare you?
Absolutely not.
Would Kareem Hunt scare you?
Absolutely not.
It wouldn't scare you at all.
First of all,
what about Fournette?
Kareem Hunt. No, because Kareem Hunt didn't even get his job back in Cleveland. They going into the season with Jerome Ford behind Nick Chubb, and now Ford is hurt, so who knows? But he couldn't even get that job back because he just wasn't good. Hunt was brought in because they have Ty Chandler as the number 1 back after Mattison. Like Mattison could play even more than Cook did last year. It doesn't make sense to me.
Wait, all right, we'll end on this point because we obviously disagree on the situation. Like that's fine.
Yeah.
Agree to disagree, but final point. Do you think Alexander Madison is good? Okay.
Fair enough. I don't. So that's where we also disagree. So there you go. That's why it's RB10 versus RB31.
One player that there better not be any disagreement on whether or not he's good is the final guy we're talking about. Erickson, thank you very much for picking my guy, Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, because Lamar Jackson is just going to break fantasy football like he did in 2019. Look, last year when Rashad Bateman was healthy, so basically when he had like one fully functioning wide receiver, he was averaging 27 fantasy points per game. That would have ranked first among all quarterbacks over the past 3 seasons. Basically, it was the best quarterback performance we saw on a per game basis since, this guy in 2019 when he won MVP, Lamar Jackson, when he was breaking fantasy football. So the fact that now they have 3 actual wide receivers in the offense between Beckham, Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers, they've invested so much in this personnel that even if a guy goes down, they still have more than they ever had at any point last year. So Lamar Jackson has shown a ceiling that has literally been unmatched, scored more fantasy points per game than any other fantasy quarterback ever. And the fact that he's not the first quarterback off the board, I get there's more risk involved with him as the injury, but no one's going to be surprised if Lamar Jackson outscores every other single quarterback based on his dual skill set with all the new weapons. If this offense does take flight with Todd Monken at the helm, I just love Lamar Jackson. When he falls into round 4, I draft him every single time.
Yeah, I mean, he's QB4 off the board. He's not even in tier 1 in our tiers in the expert rankings. He has not only the best receiving core of his career, I mean, also guys like Aguilar provide better depth than they've ever had there if a guy does go down. Isaiah Likely, too, as a second-year receiving tight end threat. But I think this is the best offensive line since that 2019 season that they've had. Also the most diverse play caller. I mean, there's just so many things to like for a guy that has already shown he can play at an elite level, even with 2 hands tied behind his back, essentially. So I love Lamar. He's the core outside of, I said Herbert earlier. Lamar is the guy I'm going to roster in the most leagues. As soon as those top 3 QBs go off the board, I'm taking Lamar every single time. We will wrap it up there. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I know it was a longer episode, but we got through a ton of league winners for you. Don't forget to check out the opportunities I mentioned with Game Time and Sleeper. Watch Fantasy Fest. That's next Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. Go drink a Miller Lite while you're watching. It's a really fun time of year. Enjoy your drafts. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. For Chris and Erickson, I'm Ryan Wormley. We'll see you guys again next time.